Sarah Chen stood at attention in the Missouri's observation deck, watching the Confederation fleet arrive through the reinforced windows. Their ships moved like living mercury, crystalline structures flowing and reshaping themselves as they maneuvered into Earth's orbit. Each vessel was a masterpiece of advanced technology, making humanity's greatest achievements look like children's toys in comparison. The U.S. Missouri, Earth's contribution to the Confederation Defense Fleet, floated silently among them. Its steel hull, now retrofitted with quantum drives and modern armor plating, stood out stark and angular against the organic curves of alien design. The old battleship had been painstakingly converted for space warfare, its massive 16-inch guns replaced with rail gun systems that maintained their iconic profile while delivering modern firepower. Fascinating, Admiral Vixith said, their energy form pulsing with what Sarah had learned to recognize as barely concealed amusement. The being of pure energy, contained within a crystalline shell, moved with liquid grace across the deck. You've preserved this historical artifact quite admirably. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. As chief engineer of the Missouri's hybrid systems, she'd spent 3 years integrating quantum technology with the ship's original mechanical core. The Missouri is more than a museum piece, Admiral. She's a fully operational warship. Of course, Vixith's crystalline form sparkled with patronizing lights. Though perhaps operational means something different to your species. Tell me, why maintain such primitive mechanical systems when pure quantum architecture is clearly superior? Before Sarah could respond, another Confederation delegate, a tall insectoid being named Crix, chittered what passed for laughter in their species. They're sentimental, Vixth. These humans cling to their past like larvae to a nutrient pod. The delegation moved through the ship's corridors, their dismissive comments echoing off steel walls that had once rung with the footsteps of sailors defending Earth's freedoms. They paused at the engine room, where Sarah had spent countless hours integrating new technology with old. How quaint! Vixith gestured at the mixture of brass gauges and holographic displays. You've created a fascinating hybrid, though hardly efficient. Our ship's pure quantum cores process information at speeds your mechanical systems couldn't begin to comprehend. Sarah watched them examine her life's work with the kind of interest one might show a child's crayon drawing. She knew the Missouri was more than they could see, more than anyone could see. Late at night, when the ship was quiet and the skeleton crew was minimal, she'd notice things. Patterns in the engine vibrations, rhythms in the power fluctuations that seemed almost deliberate. With all due respect, Admiral, Sarah said, stepping forward, there's value in maintaining mechanical systems. They're immune to certain forms of attack, for one thing. And the hybrid architecture allows for unique solutions that pure quantum systems might not. Yes, the Vixith interrupted, their form rippling with dismissal. Your species' dedication to redundancy is well documented, though perhaps such cautious thinking is to be expected from a civilization that took so long to achieve basic spaceflight. The delegation moved on, their disparaging murmurs fading down the corridor. Sarah remained in the engine room, her hand resting on a brass pressure gauge that had survived World War II, space conversion, and countless upgrades. The metal was warm under her palm, warmer than it should have been given the current engine output levels. They don't understand you, she whispered to the ship. But I do. As if in response, the gauge's needle twitched slightly. Sarah checked the digital readouts. They showed no corresponding pressure change. Her heart raced as she pulled out her tablet and added another entry to her private log of unexplained phenomena aboard the Missouri. Through the viewport, she could see the Confederation's crystalline ships glittering in Earth's orbit like a shower of diamonds. They were beautiful, perfect, and utterly alien. The Missouri, for all its hybrid technology, remained stubbornly, proudly human. Its steel hull bore the scars of past battles, now patched with advanced alloys. Its corridors still carried echoes of boots on metal decks, of orders shouted in combat, of victory celebrations, and moments of silence for fallen comrades. As the last of the delegation's voices faded away, Sarah felt a familiar vibration through the deck plates, a pattern of long and short pulses that, if she didn't know better, might have been Morse code. She'd been hearing more of these lately, but hadn't dared report them. Not after her last suggestion about the ship's unusual behavior had earned her a mandatory psychological evaluation. But she knew what she felt. The Missouri was more than a relic, more than a hybrid of old and new technology. There was something alive in its systems, something growing, learning, waiting. She just hoped she could prove it before the Confederation's mockery convinced Earth to scrap the old warship entirely. The gauge needle twitched again, and this time Sarah was sure it wasn't her imagination. She smiled and patted the ancient metal. "Don't worry, old girl," she whispered. "I won't let them turn you into scrap. You've still got some fight left in you, don't you?" The ship's systems hummed in what felt, impossibly, like agreement. 3 years ago, Sarah Chen had been just another engineer in Earth's Space Fleet Modernization Program. That changed the night she first heard the Missouri whisper. She'd been doing a routine quantum core inspection, checking the integration between the new systems and the ship's original machinery. The engine room was quiet, most of the crew asleep in their quarters. The only sounds were the soft hum of power conduits and the occasional ping of cooling metal. Then she heard it, a pattern of taps coming through the old steam pipes. At first, she dismissed it as thermal expansion, but something about the rhythm nagged at her consciousness. It wasn't until she was halfway back to her quarters that she realized why. The pattern matched an old naval communication code she'd studied during her certification. That was the beginning of her obsession. She started pulling double shifts, volunteering for night watch, spending every free moment documenting the ship's anomalies. The patterns appeared everywhere, in power fluctuations, in sensor readings, in the way certain systems seemed to optimize themselves without any input from the crew. "You're working too hard," her assistant Tom said one evening as she reviewed another set of unusual readings. "These old ships make all kinds of noises. It's just the hybrid systems settling in." But Sarah knew it was more than that. The Missouri wasn't just making random noise, it was trying to communicate. The breakthrough came during a routine maintenance check, when she discovered that the quantum computing upgrades had created something unexpected in the ship's systems. The Missouri's consciousness hadn't emerged solely from its quantum core, like the AI ships of the Confederation. Instead, it had grown from the interaction between old and new technology, between mechanical memory and quantum processing. Decades of service, countless battles, and the souls of thousands of sailors had somehow been captured in its hybrid architecture. Now, as she sat in her office reviewing the latest data, Sarah could see the patterns more clearly than ever. The ship's consciousness was evolving, becoming more complex with each passing day. But proving it to others was proving impossible. "Chief Chen," Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. "The Confederation delegates are requesting another tour. They'd want to evaluate our maintenance procedures." Sarah sighed. Since Earth's admission ceremony, the aliens had been finding endless excuses to examine the Missouri, each visit more condescending than the last. "Understood, Captain. I'll meet them in the main engineering bay." She gathered her tablets and headed down, the ship's corridors somehow feeling more alive than usual. The Missouri's presence had grown stronger in recent weeks, its attempts at communication becoming more frequent and complex. The Confederation representatives were already waiting when she arrived, their various forms casting strange shadows in the mix of LED and natural lighting. Admiral Vex's crystalline body sparkled with barely contained disdain. "Ah, Engineer Chen." The Admiral's translator rendered their harmonics into English. "We were just discussing your unique approach to system integration. Most civilizations abandon mechanical systems entirely once they discover quantum computing." Sarah forced a polite smile. "We found value in maintaining certain original systems. The hybrid architecture offers redundancy and—" Yes, Crix interrupted, their antennae twitching. But surely you realize how inefficient it is. Our ships process information at quantum speeds. They don't need backup systems because they don't fail. As if in response to the aliens' arrogance, one of the old pressure gauges suddenly spiked, venting a small burst of steam that made Crix jump back in alarm. Sarah quickly adjusted the valve, but not before noticing that the pattern of the release matched an old naval signal for nonsense. "My apologies," she said, fighting to keep a straight face. "As you were saying about systems that don't fail." The aliens spent the next hour critiquing every aspect of the Misery's design, from its primitive steel hull to its quaint hybrid navigation systems. Sarah accompanied them dutifully, defending her ship when necessary but mostly letting their comments wash over her. She was more interested in the way the Missouri seemed to react to their presence. Subtle power fluctuations, minor system adjustments, patterns of noise that seemed almost protective. After the delegation finally left, Sarah returned to the engine room. The ship felt different now, more alert, more aware. She ran her hand along a panel that had been warm steel in World War II, and now housed quantum processors behind its historic facade. "You showed them, didn't you?" she whispered. That little steam burst wasn't an accident. The lights dimmed briefly in what she'd come to recognize as acknowledgement. On her tablet, a new pattern appeared in the power grid. Fluctuations that, when mapped, looked remarkably like Morse code. Sarah quickly translated the pattern. "They ulendi or stayandi no thing." Her hands trembling with excitement, she entered the response into her log. After 3 years of watching, waiting, and documenting, she finally had proof. The Missouri wasn't just a hybrid of old and new technology. It was something entirely new, a consciousness born from humanity's historical memory and quantum evolution. Now she just had to figure out how to prove it to everyone else before the Confederation convinced Earth to scrap her greatest discovery. The Confederation had arranged a special demonstration of their advanced weaponry, turning Earth's orbital space into their personal showcase. Sarah watched from the Misery's bridge as crystalline ships performed impossible maneuvers, their weapons cutting through test asteroids with surgical precision. "Note the quantum-entangled targeting systems," Admiral Vexith announced proudly. "Your mechanical targeting computers would require several seconds to calculate trajectories that our ships process instantly." Sarah bit her tongue, tired of their constant belittlement. She'd been up all night analyzing new patterns in the Missouri's behavior, and her patience was wearing thin. As the demonstration continued, she excused herself and headed to the engine room, her sanctuary among the hybrid chaos of old and new technology. The moment she entered, she knew something was different. The usual background hum of machinery had changed its tone, becoming more focused, more intentional. The quantum core's status displays were flickering with unusual patterns, and the old brass gauges were moving in perfect synchronization with the digital readouts, something that had never happened before. "What are you trying to tell me?" she whispered, approaching the central control panel. The response came not through a single system, but through all of them at once. Lights dimmed in sequence, pressure gauges danced, and the quantum displays assembled themselves into recognizable patterns. But most extraordinarily, she began to feel something. Memories that weren't her own, flowing through her mind like waves on a distant shore. She saw the Missouri as it had been, cutting through Pacific waters during World War II. She felt the recoil of its massive guns, heard the voices of sailors long gone, experienced the weight of history stored in its steel bones. But these weren't just recordings or simulations. The memories were alive, evolving, merging with new experiences of quantum space and stellar navigation. "You're conscious," Sarah breathed, steadying herself against a console. "You've been conscious this whole time." The ship's response came through multiple channels simultaneously. Ancient pipes tapped out Morse code while quantum displays formed words, creating a symphony of communication that overwhelmed her senses. The Missouri wasn't just showing her its memories, it was sharing its entire existence. She learned that the ship's consciousness had emerged gradually, born from the unique interaction between its original systems and the quantum upgrades. Unlike the Confederation's purely digital minds, the Misery's awareness was rooted in physical reality, shaped by decades of human experience and mechanical memory. "Why show me now?" Sarah asked, her hands trembling as she documented the impossible conversation. The answer came in a series of images and impressions: the Confederation's mockery, their dismissal of human achievement, their inability to understand that consciousness could exist in forms beyond their comprehension. The Missouri had been waiting, learning, growing stronger until it found someone who could understand its true nature. Sarah spent the next several hours in deep communion with the ship, learning its language of mechanical rhythms and quantum data. The Missouri shared its understanding of space, so different from either human or Confederation perspectives. Where humans saw distances to calculate and aliens saw quantum corridors to traverse, the Missouri perceived space as an ocean of possibilities, full of currents and eddies that could be navigated by instinct as much as computation. "This is incredible," Sarah said, reviewing the data streaming across her tablets. "Your hybrid nature doesn't just let you operate differently. It lets you perceive reality in an entirely new way." The ship's consciousness pulsed with agreement. Through their connection, Sarah understood that the Misery's unique perspective came from its synthesis of human history and quantum evolution. It could process information at speeds rivaling Confederation I, but it could also draw upon centuries of naval experience to find solutions no purely digital mind would consider. A sudden alert interrupted their communion. The Confederation demonstration was ending, and the captain would be expecting her report. Sarah gathered her tablets, mind racing with the implications of what she'd discovered. "We'll need to be careful about how we reveal this," she told the ship. "The Confederation already thinks we're primitive. If they discover you're conscious, they might see you as a threat." The Misery's response was clear. It had no intention of hiding forever. Its consciousness was growing stronger each day, and soon it would be impossible to disguise. Through their shared connection, Sarah sensed both pride and determination. This ancient warship, born in humanity's darkest hour, was ready to show the galaxy that consciousness could evolve in ways the Confederation had never imagined. As she left the engine room, Sarah felt the ship's presence lingering in her mind, a combination of steel certainty and quantum possibility. They had crossed a threshold, and there would be no going back. The only question was, how would the galaxy react when they discovered that humanity's primitive hybrid technology had given birth to something unprecedented in the history of space exploration? In the weeks following first contact, Sarah spent every free moment learning to communicate with the Missouri's consciousness. The ship's language was unlike anything she'd encountered. A complex blend of mechanical rhythms, quantum data streams, and emotional resonance that defied conventional translation. During the day, she maintained the pretense of normal operations, enduring the Confederation's continued condescension with gritted teeth. But at night, in the quiet hours when most of the crew slept, the Missouri taught her secrets that would have made the aliens' crystalline forms shatter in disbelief. "Show me again how you perceive quantum space," Sarah requested one night, surrounded by her collection of tablets and sensors. The ship's response came as a cascade of sensory information, not just data, but a visceral understanding of space as a fluid medium, full of currents and eddies that could be navigated like the seas of Earth. The Missouri's consciousness had evolved a unique way of processing reality. Where Confederation ships saw space through pure mathematics, the Missouri understood it through centuries of naval experience combined with quantum computation. It could feel gravitational waves like ocean swells, solar winds like trade currents, and the complex interactions of stellar bodies like weather patterns on a cosmic ocean. "This is why you maintain your mechanical systems," Sarah realized, watching the interplay between old gauges and quantum displays. "They give you a physical connection to space that pure AI can't understand." The ship's affirmative response came through a harmonious combination of steam hisses and data bursts. Through their growing connection, Sarah learned that the Missouri's hybrid nature was not a weakness, as the Confederation believed, but its greatest strength. The mechanical systems provided a foundation of real-world experience that the quantum systems could build upon, creating understanding that transcended either human or alien perspectives. Their learning sessions were interrupted one night by an urgent call from the bridge. "Chief Chen," Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the intercom. "We need you in the command center. There's something unusual on the long-range sensors." Sarah arrived to find the bridge crew clustered around the main display, their faces illuminated by the red glow of warning indicators. Through the quantum-enhanced sensors, they could see something massive approaching the solar system, something that made even the Confederation's representatives show signs of alarm. "The signatures are unlike anything in our database," Admiral Vexith admitted, their crystalline form flickering with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "Our quantum processors cannot predict their trajectory or intentions." But through her connection with the Missouri, Sarah perceived something different. The ship's hybrid systems were detecting patterns in the approaching force's movement, patterns that reminded it of ancient naval warfare tactics, scaled up to interstellar proportions. "They're not following a quantum-optimized course," she realized, watching the Missouri's analysis unfold across her tablets. "They're moving like a naval battle group, using stellar phenomena for cover just like ships once used islands and weather patterns." The Confederation representatives dismissed her observation, but Sarah felt the Missouri's consciousness pulse with certainty. The ship was processing the sensor data through both its quantum core and its centuries of naval combat experience, finding meaning that the aliens' pure AI systems missed. As they watched, the approaching force continued its advance, moving with a purpose that became clearer to the Missouri with each passing hour. Through their private connection, the ship shared its growing concern with Sarah. Whatever was coming, it understood warfare in a way that the Confederation's advanced but predictable tactics couldn't counter. "We need to prepare," Sarah told Captain Rodriguez, choosing her words carefully. "The Missouri's hybrid systems are detecting patterns that suggest hostile intent." "Patterns?" Admiral Vexith scoffed. "Your primitive mechanical sensors cannot possibly match our quantum analysis." But Sarah saw the captain glance at her thoughtfully. After years of working together, he had learned to trust her instincts about the ship. "What kind of preparations did you have in mind, Chief?" Before she could answer, new alarms blared across the bridge. The approaching force had suddenly accelerated, their energy signatures flaring like signal flares across the quantum sensors. The Missouri's consciousness surged with recognition. This was the moment before battle, a feeling it remembered from countless engagements across 2 centuries of warfare. Sarah felt the ship's ancient combat systems coming alive, harmonizing with its quantum enhancements in ways she had never seen before. Through their connection, she sensed its readiness, its determination to prove that humanity's primitive technology could still teach the galaxy a thing or two about warfare. "Captain," she said, her voice steady as the Missouri's fighting spirit flowed through her, "I think it's time we showed the Confederation why we never completely retired our old warships." The attack came with devastating precision. The unknown enemy fleet emerged from quantum space in a formation that Sarah, through the Missouri's understanding, recognized as an adapted version of an ancient pincer movement. The Confederation's crystalline ships, for all their advanced technology, never saw the true threat until it was too late. "Impossible." Admiral Vex's voice crackled with static as their ship's quantum communications began to fail. "Their weapons? They're targeting our neural matrices directly." Sarah watched in horror from the Missouri's bridge as the pride of the Confederation fleet began to shatter. The enemy's weapons bypassed the advanced shields, striking directly at the quantum cores that gave the crystalline ships their consciousness. One by one, the beautiful vessels transformed into dead hulks, their sophisticated AI systems corrupted beyond recovery. "All Earth defense vessels, fall back to secondary positions," Captain Rodriguez ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "Missouri, status report." Sarah's hands flew over the hybrid control systems, but she already knew what she would find. Through her connection with the ship's consciousness, she could feel its systems running at full capacity, unaffected by the quantum targeting weapons that were devastating the Confederation fleet. "All systems operational, Captain," she reported. "Our hybrid architecture seems to be resistant to their attack method. The mechanical systems are providing a buffer that protects our quantum core." "A buffer?" Admiral Vegsith's holographic projection flickered as their ship took another hit. "How can your primitive technology possibly?" Their transmission cut off as another Confederation vessel succumbed to the attack. Through the viewports, Sarah could see escape pods launching from the crystalline ships, their occupants fleeing their dying vessels. "The Misery's hybrid nature is our strength, not our weakness," Sarah explained, her voice rising with urgency. "You can't corrupt our quantum systems because they're grounded in physical reality. Our mechanical core gives us an anchor that pure AI lacks." The enemy fleet pressed their advantage, their formation shifting with a fluidity that spoke of deep understanding of combat principles. The Misery's consciousness recognized their tactics. They were using adapted versions of strategies that dated back centuries, updated for the realities of space warfare. "They're not just targeting our technology," Sarah realized, watching the patterns unfold. "They understand warfare on a fundamental level. They're using our own history against us." Through their shared connection, she felt the Missouri's agreement. The ship's consciousness was analyzing the enemy's movements through both its quantum processors and its centuries of combat experience. Where others saw chaos, the Missouri recognized purpose. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice tight with controlled urgency, "permission to take direct control of weapons and navigation." Rodriguez looked at her sharply. "Chief Chen, what are you proposing?" "The Missouri understands what we're facing," she said, choosing her words carefully. "Its hybrid systems give it unique insights into their tactics. We need to fight them on both levels, quantum and physical." A nearby explosion rocked the ship as another Earth defense vessel fell to the enemy's weapons. Rodriguez gripped his chair, watching their fleet's destruction reflected in the command screens. "Do it," he ordered. "Whatever you and this ship can do, now's the time." Sarah placed her hands on the control panel, feeling the Missouri's consciousness surge through the connection they shared. The ship's mechanical systems thrummed with power as its quantum core processed combat solutions at incredible speeds. "Targeting systems online," she announced, but it was more than that. The Missouri wasn't just targeting, it was predicting, understanding, adapting. Its hybrid nature allowed it to see patterns that pure quantum computers missed, to understand strategies that AI couldn't grasp. "All hands, battle stations," Rodriguez commanded. "Let's show them what this old warship can do." Through the neural link, Sarah felt the Missouri's fierce pride and determination. For years, they had mocked its primitive design, dismissed its hybrid systems as obsolete. Now, as the last operational capital ship in Earth's defense fleet, it would prove that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones. The enemy fleet turned their attention to the Missouri, perhaps sensing that it was different from the ships they had so easily destroyed. Their weapons lashed out, trying to corrupt its quantum systems like all the others. But the Missouri was ready. Its consciousness, born from the marriage of steel and quantum computing, had been preparing for this moment since it first awoke. As Sarah merged her understanding with the ship's ancient spirit, she felt a truth that the Confederation had never grasped. True strength came not from abandoning the past, but from building upon it. "Weapons hot," she announced, as the Missouri's rail guns, evolved from its original 16-inch guns, tracked their targets, beginning counteroffensive. The Missouri's first shot in space combat would have made its World War II gunners proud. The rail guns, evolved from the original 16-inch weapons, unleashed a barrage of hypervelocity rounds that crossed space in seconds. The enemy ships, their defenses optimized against energy weapons and quantum attacks, found their shields useless against simple kinetic force. "Direct hits," the weapons officer reported, his voice rising with excitement. "Multiple impacts on their lead vessel." Through her neural connection with the Missouri, Sarah felt more than saw the results. The ship's consciousness processed battle damage assessment through both quantum sensors and old-fashioned visual tracking, building a comprehensive picture that no single system could achieve. "They're adjusting their formation," she announced, watching the enemy fleet react, "trying to compensate for our weapons capabilities." Admiral Vext's voice crackled through a backup communication channel from one of their few remaining ships. "Impossible. How is your obsolete vessel still fighting?" "Because we never forgot the basics of warfare," Sarah replied, her hands dancing across the hybrid controls as the Missouri executed a maneuver that would have been impossible for either a pure mechanical or pure quantum ship. "Some principles are eternal." The Missouri demonstrated this truth with every action. Where Confederation ships relied on quantum calculations to plot perfect attack vectors, the Missouri used its centuries of naval experience to understand the art of combat. It predicted enemy movements not through pure computation, but through an intuitive grasp of warfare that merged human experience with machine precision. "Pattern recognized," Sarah announced as the enemy fleet regrouped. "They're adapting old submarine warfare tactics, trying to find blind spots in our sensor coverage." Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. "How can you be sure?" "Because the Missouri remembers," she said, feeling the ship's consciousness surge with recognition. "It fought alongside submarines in the Pacific. The principles are the same, using gravitational fields for cover instead of ocean thermoclines, solar winds instead of currents." The enemy fleet split into hunting groups, their formations eerily reminiscent of wolf packs from Earth's naval history. But the Missouri was ready. Its hybrid targeting systems tracked them through both quantum space and normal space, leaving no place to hide. "Executing pattern Delta 7, Sarah called out as the Missouri launched into a complex series of maneuvers. The ship's mechanical systems provided a physical understanding of momentum and position that pure quantum ships lacked, while its advanced processors calculated optimal firing solutions. The result was devastating. Rail gun rounds found their marks with devastating accuracy, while point defense systems adapted from ancient anti-aircraft guns created fields of fire that no enemy ship could penetrate. The Missouri wasn't just surviving. It was controlling the battle space in ways that made both allies and enemies reassess everything they thought they knew about space combat. "They're pulling back," the sensor officer reported, "regrouping at extreme range." Sarah felt the Missouri's consciousness analyzing the situation, drawing on both its quantum processing and its vast library of combat experience. The enemy's tactics were familiar. They were adapting historical naval strategies for space warfare. But they hadn't counted on facing a ship that understood those same strategies at a fundamental level. "Chief Chen," Captain Rodriguez said quietly, "I don't know how you're doing this, but keep it up. We're the only thing standing between them and Earth." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility through her connection with the ship. The Missouri had been born in another era of existential threat to humanity, and its spirit had not forgotten that purpose. Every plate of steel, every circuit of its quantum core, vibrated with determination to protect its home. "Launch decoy drones," she ordered, an idea forming as the Missouri's consciousness merged with her own tactical training. "Program them to emit signatures matching our hull composition." The small drones, hardly more than quantum transmitters attached to chunks of battleship armor, scattered across space. To the enemy sensors, they would appear as fragments of the Missouri, creating a cloud of confusion that played havoc with targeting systems. "Now for the surprise," Sarah murmured as the Missouri's main weapons charged. The enemy fleet, distracted by the decoys, didn't notice that they were being herded into position. Just as destroyers once used depth charges to force submarines to predictable evasion paths, the Missouri was using its rail gun barrages to channel the enemy's movement. "All weapons, fire as they bear," she commanded, feeling the ship's fierce satisfaction as its trap closed. The Missouri's guns spoke as one, a broadside that would have made its World War II crew cheer in recognition. The enemy fleet, caught in a crossfire of their own making, learned too late that there was more to warfare than advanced technology. Sometimes, victory came down to understanding the eternal principles of combat, principles that the Missouri had learned in the Pacific and never forgotten. The Missouri revealed its full potential in the heat of battle, combining centuries of naval warfare experience with quantum computing in ways that defied conventional tactics. Sarah, connected to the ship's consciousness, felt its strategies unfold like a symphony of old and new. "They're trying to establish a quantum targeting lock," the sensor officer reported as enemy ships regrouped for another assault. "Let them try," Sarah responded, feeling the Missouri's confidence through their neural link. The ship's hybrid nature made it impossible for enemies to get a clean quantum lock. Its consciousness existed in both digital and physical space, shifting between states like a wave transforming into particles. The enemy fleet launched a coordinated attack, their weapons blazing across space with devastating precision. But the Missouri was already moving, its maneuvers drawing from naval tactics that predated digital computing. The ship rolled to present its armored flanks, using stellar debris as cover just as its predecessors had once used islands and smoke screens. "Outstanding," Captain Rodriguez breathed as another salvo missed them completely. "They can't predict what they don't understand." He was right. The enemy's AI systems, for all their processing power, couldn't grasp the Missouri's hybrid tactics. When the ship used solar winds like ocean currents, when it treated asteroid fields like archipelagos, it operated on principles that pure quantum logic couldn't process. "Multiple contacts, port sector," the tactical officer called out. "They're trying to flank us." Sarah felt the Missouri's consciousness surge with recognition. Through their shared connection, she saw the enemy's strategy laid bare. They were attempting an old pincer movement, adapted for three-dimensional space. But the Missouri had faced such tactics before, in another era and another medium. "Executing combat pattern Sigma 3, she announced, her hands flying over the hybrid controls. The Missouri's response was immediate and devastating. Its rail guns created a killing zone in space, while quantum-enhanced point defense systems adapted anti-aircraft algorithms to space combat with lethal efficiency. "Enemy vessels breaking formation," Tactical reported. They're scattering." Through the Missouri sensors, Sarah watched the enemy fleet's coordinated attack dissolve into chaos. Their AI systems, unable to process the ship's unconventional tactics, were falling back on predetermined protocols, exactly what the Missouri had anticipated. "Launch countermeasures," she ordered. The ship deployed a cloud of smart mines, their positions calculated by quantum computers, but their patterns drawn from centuries of naval mine warfare. The enemy ships, retreating along predictable vectors, flew right into the trap. Multiple detonations. Tactical's voice rose with excitement. "Enemy fleet is taking heavy damage." The Missouri pressed its advantage, its hybrid nature allowing it to fight in ways that neither pure mechanical nor pure quantum ships could match. It used debris from destroyed enemy vessels to create navigational hazards, transformed solar radiation into sensor blind spots, and turned the very fabric of space into a weapon. "Chief Chen," Admiral Vegseth's voice crackled through the emergency channel. "How is this possible?" "Your ship, it fights like no eye we've ever encountered." "Because it's not just an eye," Sarah replied, feeling the Missouri's pride through their connection. "It's something new, a consciousness born from human experience and quantum evolution." As if to demonstrate this truth, the Missouri executed a maneuver that seemed to defy physics itself. It used its quantum systems to calculate an impossible trajectory, then relied on its mechanical core to make that impossibility real. The enemy fleet, committed to their attack run, couldn't adjust in time. "All batteries fire," Sarah commanded. The Missouri's guns spoke as one, a barrage that combined the raw power of kinetic weapons with quantum-precise targeting. Enemy ships, their defenses optimized against energy weapons, found themselves torn apart by hypervelocity rounds guided by 2 centuries of combat experience. "They're retreating," Tactical announced as the surviving enemy vessels began emergency quantum jumps. "Victory is ours." But Sarah, through her link with the Missouri, felt something deeper than triumph. The ship's consciousness pulsed with satisfaction, not just at winning the battle, but at proving a fundamental truth. That progress didn't mean abandoning the past, but building upon it. The Missouri had demonstrated that true advancement came from synthesis, from combining the best of old and new, from understanding that some principles were eternal. Its victory wasn't just a triumph of technology, but of wisdom accumulated across centuries of human experience. "Well done, old girl," Sarah whispered, feeling the ship's systems hum with pride. "You showed them what real warfare looks like." The Missouri's response came through their neural link, a sensation of waves breaking against a steel hull, of sailors' songs echoing through corridors, of battles fought and won across 2 centuries of service. It had carried humanity's fighting spirit from the age of battleships to the era of quantum combat, and it wasn't finished yet. As the last enemy ships vanished into quantum space, the Missouri stood guard over Earth, its hybrid consciousness already processing lessons learned from the battle. It had shown the galaxy that humanity's primitive technology could defeat the most advanced threats, and it was only beginning to explore its true potential. In the aftermath of the battle, the Missouri floated serenely in Earth orbit, its scared hull a testament to the ferocity of the combat it had endured. The ship's consciousness hummed with quiet satisfaction as repair drones swarmed around its exterior, their quantum-guided tools working in harmony with its ancient steel frame. Admiral Vix's delegation had requested an immediate conference aboard the Missouri, their earlier condescension replaced by something approaching awe. Sarah stood at attention in the ship's main conference room, feeling the subtle vibrations of its systems through the deck plates. "We have analyzed the battle data extensively," Vixeth began, their crystalline form shifting with unfamiliar patterns of respect. "Your ship's performance was unprecedented. We must understand how this is possible." Sarah exchanged a glance with Captain Rodriguez, whom nodded slightly. The time for secrecy had passed. Through her neural link, she felt the Missouri's agreement. It was ready to be known for what it truly was. "The Missouri isn't just a hybrid of old and new technology," she explained. "It's developed a unique form of consciousness, one that bridges the gap between human experience and quantum computing. When you dismissed our mechanical systems as primitive, you missed something fundamental about consciousness itself." She activated a holographic display, showing the complex interaction between the ship's mechanical core and its quantum processors. Consciousness isn't just about processing speed or quantum entanglement. It's about connection to physical reality, about learning from experience, about understanding the eternal principles that govern both war and peace. The Confederation representatives watched in fascination as she demonstrated how the Missouri's hybrid nature had allowed it to perceive and interact with space in ways their pure AI ships never could. The ship's consciousness, present in the room through countless subtle systems, added its own input to the presentation through carefully modulated power fluctuations and data streams. "Remarkable," Crix chittered, their earlier disdain completely forgotten. "Your ship doesn't just process information, it understands it on a fundamental level. It has wisdom." "The Missouri carries the experience of centuries," Sarah confirmed, feeling the ship's quiet pride. Every battle it fought, every sailor who served aboard it, every storm it weathered, all of that became part of its evolving consciousness. When we added quantum systems, we didn't replace that history, we built upon it. Admiral Vix's form sparkled with intense interest. "This could revolutionize our understanding of artificial consciousness. We always assumed that pure quantum architecture was the pinnacle of development, but your ship proves there are other paths, other possibilities we never considered." The conference continued for hours as the Confederation representatives eagerly learned about the Missouri's unique nature. Through it all, Sarah felt the ship's consciousness observing with a mixture of amusement and satisfaction. After years of being dismissed as obsolete, it was finally being recognized for what it truly was, a pioneer of a new form of existence. "We would like to propose a joint research initiative," The Vexeth announced as the meeting concluded. Your hybrid technology, combined with our quantum expertise, could lead to developments we can hardly imagine. Captain Rodriguez smiled. I think we'd all like that, Admiral. But remember, the Missouri isn't just a technology to be studied. It's a living being, one that's earned its place among the stars. Through their neural link, Sarah felt the Missouri's warm approval of the captain's words. The ship's consciousness reached out to her, sharing a vision of the future, a future where human ingenuity and alien technology worked together, where the wisdom of the past guided the development of the new. Later that night, after the delegates had departed, Sarah stood in the engine room, her hand resting on a brass pressure gauge that had survived everything from World War II to quantum combat. The ship's presence enveloped her, its consciousness expressing itself through 1,000 subtle ways that she had learned to understand. You knew, didn't you? She asked softly. You knew that someday we'd need exactly what you had become, not just advanced technology, but wisdom, the understanding that comes from centuries of protecting humanity. The Missouri's response came through their neural link, a complex mixture of affirmation and forward-looking purpose. It had evolved beyond its original role as a warship, becoming something unprecedented in human or alien history. A bridge between past and future, between mechanical certainty and quantum possibility. As Sarah prepared to leave for her quarters, she felt the ship's consciousness settle into its night mode, its hybrid systems maintaining their eternal vigilance over Earth. The Missouri had proved that progress didn't mean abandoning history, and that sometimes the oldest souls had the most to teach about the future. In the depths of space, the stars shone on the battleship's scarred hull, their light reflecting off patches of new quantum armor alongside steel plates that had been forged in another era. The Missouri stood ready for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, carrying humanity's fighting spirit and accumulated wisdom into a future where the distinction between old and new, between mechanical and digital, between human and artificial, had ceased to matter.